Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Soulcast Media Live. Hi. Oh my gosh. So as we were waiting for people to come in, I was looking at all the comments that have been thrown in of where people are dialing in from. And it's actually kind of fantastic. We literally have people from all over the world right now, Kim, and it is fantastic. New York City, Brazil, Singapore, Malaysia, Pakistan. Oh my gosh. So if everybody can hear me talk, I know, right? Give us a thumbs up just so we know that the audio is working. So for those who are joining, welcome. You are here at our Soulcast Media Live, where I have my friend Kim here, who's going to be joining us. We have so many great things that we're going to be chatting about today. The topic is all about what you need to do to gain recognition in the workplace. It's all about communication. So obviously communication is a huge part of the work that we do here at Soulcast Media. Now, to give everyone a really quick introduction, my name is Jessica Chen, and I'm the founder and CEO of Soulcast Media, and we are a business communications agency. And so we work with Fortune 500 companies, individuals, on how people can really build that speaking confidence, whether it's with presentations, one-on-one meetings, whatever it is, because I believe communications is one of the most important skills. Now, before I introduce my fantastic friend and guest, Kim, I have to give a quick shout out to our sponsors for this event today, which is Low & Sons. Now, one of the great things about this company is they make actually handbags. And I actually have to show it to you before we even dive into this. Kim, you might actually appreciate this.
Can I Vanna White this?
Right? Exactly. So they make handbags, and it's actually, what's great about it is, I think they sent this over to me, and it's designed in such a way it's versatile and it's obviously friendly for people, young professionals. Like, I guess as us, I like to say we're young professionals here because they can fit like things like your laptop, yeah, and just all the good stuff. So anyways, I have to say thank you so much to Low & Sons for sponsoring this event. For those who are interested in learning more about them, I have a link over in our box, wherever it is you're viewing from. So without further ado, yeah, right, wherever it is, let me introduce you to Kim. Kim, why don't you give us a really quick introduction of the work that you do? And you have a very impressive background. You really do. You've kind of like done it all. And honestly, let me just actually, I have to say this. Before I even met you, Kim, I was reading about you and I was just like, oh my gosh, this girl has done so much. And she obviously is a professional in her industry. To become so successful, I feel like there's so much that we can learn from you. So Kim, tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and the work you do now.
Sure. So I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I was working in the corporate field, loving life in the magazine industry when entrepreneurship found me 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I started my marketing agency and we focus on super fans, mainly working with all of your favorite rock stars, sports team, live event properties to help engage their fans. And after 10 years of that, I started it at age 11. Clearly, I'm not a day over 21. After I did that for 10 years, I just started working, going knees deep into education and training. So taking everything that I learned over the last 10 years, working with superstars like Paul McCartney, Oprah, Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, and saying, how can I translate these lessons over to us, Jessica, to people like you and me and Jolene and Maria and Carissa and everybody who's here today? How can I translate those lessons? And so that's what I've been doing over the past year, really helping individuals invest in themselves, invest in their career, and building their career capital, which is why I'm so excited, because one of our biggest overlaps is all about communication and communicating your value to other people. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is don't assume. Assuming is never good. Don't assume that people know what you do or know what you've been working on or know where your passions lie, because people aren't mind readers.
I can't even say, you have so much that we can learn from. Honestly, I'm so excited to dive into this. I have like a list of questions ready to go. So for those who are watching, actually, if you guys have any questions for Kim and I as we're having this, casual conversation, and just so you guys know, this is going to be about 40 minutes or so long. And if you have questions, throw it in the chat function. And if we have some time, we might actually pull some of these questions up and we will answer it, because really, we're just so glad that you are spending, whether it's your morning, your evening, wherever you are in the world, this time is for you. And we really want you to be able to walk away feeling better in, how you can gain recognition in the workplace, which is what today's topic is all about. So Kim, thank you so much for your introduction. I mean, you mentioned your experience in business to now helping you really just teach people these skills. So let me kind of just start off and kick off with this first question that I have for you. So I know you said that you became an accidental entrepreneur, but was, communicating something that you were particularly good at early on? Was it something that you were naturally good at? And, there are some people who are just really great natural communicators. They just know how to talk about themselves, their ideas. Was it something you were good at? Or was it something you had to learn? And what did you kind of find work for you?
I would say I was always good at communicating to get other people around me. And not that this is a therapy session, but I think this goes back to the fact that I am an only child. So what does that mean? That means on the weekends when I was growing up, if I didn't organize play dates or I didn't get other people to come play with me, it was going to be me and my Barbies at home hanging out all alone. So I had to make dang sure that Monday through Friday, people were like, hey, can Kim come over to this birthday party? Can Kim come over and hang out? Because if not, I was going to be solo for the weekend. So I did learn from a young age how to integrate myself into other groups. So I credit that to being an only child. But as an adult, something I really struggled with, and I think that you've probably done it as well, because I have this theory that women are kind of especially bad at this. I had a hard time communicating my worth. I had no problem talking about my best friend. She's freaking amazing. She's Beyonce. I can tell you all about her. Like, so great. But then if I had to talk about myself, it was like disastrous. Like, please don't make me talk about myself. Please don't make me take any sort of spotlight or and that is really what I had to learn to reverse as an adult.
You touched on a really good point in terms of talking about yourself. And I can really resonate with that. And it's funny. So for those who don't know my background, I used to be a former television news reporter. And I always say that was actually a really great career for me, because as journalists, we kind of had to be behind the scenes of a story. We could never, talk about our opinions of a particular issue or, whatever it was. So it was a good way for me to not really talk about how I truly felt about it, because that wasn't my job, right? But now that, like Kim, we have our own businesses, we have to talk about ourselves. So for you, Kim, and I will definitely share some tips too. How did you begin to talk about yourself? Which, first of all, how did you develop that confidence to do it for those who, might not feel entirely comfortable doing it? And how do you do it in a way that doesn't necessarily seem off-putting or showing off too much? Because I think there's that balance.
The way that I started doing it, if anyone is a Star Trek fan out there, I'm a secret nerd. I love Star Trek and Marvel movies and all that stuff. There was a character named Spock, and Spock was very about the facts. There was no emotion. He was very like black and white, and 1 + 1 is 2. Like, everything is very factual. And what I realized was helpful for me when talking about myself is to not focus on things that could be judged. I'm good at this. I'm the best at this. I do this quickly. I do this fast, because fast is a relative term. Are we talking fast, Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world? Or are we talking fast like, a 10-minute mile, and that feels pretty fast to me because I'm sweating bullets? There's different versions of fast. And so instead, what I said, when I talk about myself, I'm only going to reference factual things, which I call names and numbers. So I can say, for instance, to give you an example, I can say, Jessica, I work with A-list clients and big properties. And you might go, A-list clients and big properties. Like, okay, like I know our town has a big baseball team. Like, maybe she works with the baseball team. And that kind of leaves you to assume. Whereas if I just use facts and say, Jessica, I work with really large professional teams, such as the New York Mets, such as the Boston Red Sox, That's not me bragging. That's not me saying anything. That's just stating facts. So one thing I always tell people is if you're struggling to talk about yourself, try just using names and numbers, like straight facts, because it's not something that can be judged. And I think that that's one thing that if like anyone takes away one thing to try out, that would be what I would say.
I love that. It's kind of like indisputable, right? Nobody can really say that's not true because you did do it, right? Whether it's like, so for those who are watching who work at like, let's say a corporate company, right? When you're talking about yourself and your accomplishments, make sure, and this is actually one of the things that I write about a lot. It's about this idea of self-authenticating, and it's making sure that whether it's through numbers or data or through research or through truly people that you've worked with, clients, people that you've touched and who can vouch for you, saying these things out loud, I think is huge in terms of building your credibility, which ultimately is why we do have to talk about ourselves. Because one of the things I will always say is you have to be your own best cheerleader, right? No one's going to advocate for you better than you can advocate for yourself. Plus, you can't necessarily depend on other people to do that because it's almost unfair, right? So you have to learn how to talk about yourself. One thing I'll add to that, which I think is already a really fantastic point, Kim, so you talk about making sure you have facts that you can include when you're talking about yourself, but it's just really understanding your own, what I call value add, right? I think everybody kind of has a unique, tinge to who they are as people, as employers, whatever it is, identifying your value add that makes you unique, and being able to communicate that. So I guess one of the other questions I had is fear. I think fear of talking about yourself is really what gets people to kind of be like, ugh, kind of uncomfortable. I'd rather have my work show for itself, right? I hear that a lot. I'd rather just have my work show for itself. So Kim, what are your thoughts about finding this balance?
This is like the picture that I always paint for people. We all were in school at one time or another, elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever kind of school. And there would always be a moment in class where the teacher would ask a question. So 2 + 2 is on the board. Does anybody know the answer? And the room would be silent for a good 10, 15 seconds. And then someone would raise their hand. Someone would say, I know the answer. 2 + 2 is 4, or, whatever was on the board. And my question to people is, when you have that fear of raising your hand, how on earth is the teacher supposed to call on you if you don't raise your hand? And what I mean by that is when there are awards or opportunities or a promotion or an accolade, if you don't raise your hand and say, hey, I deserve that promotion. Hey, I've been working my tail off. Hey, I think I could be in line for that honor. How are people supposed to know? I think as children, we're always taught to raise our hand. And then somewhere between high school and adulthood, we become these shells that sit in the back. And it's don't pick me. Don't look at me.
Yeah.
And then people are also wondering, well, I've been working my tail off. Why didn't I get that promotion? Or that person won that award. I'm doing 10 times more than them. How are people supposed to know? You haven't been raising your hand. So I think it's one of those things that when you have that fear, you have to say, but I know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is you, and what you were just saying, that sort of special sauce that makes you unique and makes you qualified for what it is that you want to do.
One of the other things that I would definitely add to that, and this isn't something that I learned really early on, it's actually something that I realized. And once I realized this, I was like, wow, this is powerful. So I know we're talking about yourself, right? And how can you do it, without being off-putting, without, any of those things. But I have found that if early on that you're not necessarily comfortable with it, because there is kind of a huge learning curve, how do you just step out and do it? I will say a great way to showcase your value is talking about how what helps other people, right? How what you know can benefit the team, how what you know can benefit this person, the organization. So it's kind of going from this, then you're kind of tailoring, since this is all about communication, you're tailoring your message. So it's going from I to we, right? So it's like, I'm able to get our organization to A, B, and C because I know how to do blah, 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 right? So automatically you are already showing your value add, but it doesn't necessarily seem so self-serving because you're actually making it about an organization, an initiative, a project, and who can really fault you for that when you're just trying to show how you can help, right? And the other great thing is, maybe if somebody comes over and says like, oh, but I kind of like, I've seen it done this way, you may not necessarily feel like you're taking it personally because then you're just saying like, this is what I know, this is what I've done, right? So it can take some of that fear out of it. I don't know. What do you think, Kim?
I think it's such a great point. I think something that we all forget is that we need to share what's working. And it's funny sorry you guys didn't get to join, but offline, Jessica and I caught up before this. And that's what I do with so many fellow business leaders or executives. I'm like, hey, like what's working for you? Like, and I was telling you, like, how did you get those signups? How did you get that page working? And I think we sometimes forget because we think of it as bragging, like, well, this is how I did all these fancy signups, or this is how I did, something at my job. When in reality, like, you're being helpful. Like, it is helpful for other people to hear what is working for you. And so it's funny, I actually named my newsletter on LinkedIn What Works, because my friends used to make fun of me because the minute I sat down or the minute we started a Zoom call, I'd be like, so what's working for you? I'd be like, what's working for you lately? What do you got for me? Because I think we forget that other people are really hungry for that knowledge. And so I would say, again, don't think of it as you showing off. Think of it as you sharing or you serving up something that works for you.
Yeah. And here's the thing, don't feel that, you sharing a little bit about what you know is, that somebody else is going to take it away from you or they're going to take credit for it. I really feel that, and I've talked about this before about, building your army of influence, building your army of supporters, things that, if one person takes this idea that you have or whatever it is, if other people around you know that, oh my gosh, Kim is actually really good at this, or, Bob is actually really good at this, this one person taking credit for your idea, won't really go far, is what I'll say, So I think that's why it's so much better for you to be able to find that confidence to communicate whatever value it is, whatever idea you have, and don't feel like you have to protect it so tightly all the time, because I think the thing is other people have to know. So, Kim, is there anything else you want to add? I do actually have a few other questions, but I want to make sure that we kind of covered this part of it. But any other kind of tips in terms of, that fear element for people to find,
The last thing I will say, which might not be good for everybody, is that it's always going to be a little scary.
Yeah.
Like, if you're waiting for the magic rainbow, unicorn, Broadway play, Hugh Jackman jazz hands for it to just never be scary or never be uncomfortable, like, don't hold your breath, because I can speak for myself. For the last 10 years, I've been pitching my business, pitching myself as an entrepreneur, talking about myself, talking about my services. And like, it's still hard. Like, I still don't necessarily walk into a room doing cartwheels with a marching band. So I will just say that don't get discouraged if you wake up day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and it's still like a little uncomfortable or a little scary. That's totally normal.
Yeah. And I will, be the first to admit, talking about myself was not something that I was naturally comfortable at, but I do think you kind of have to start, baby steps, talk about it with people who are you trust, who are comfortable with you. And then from there, kind of expand your circle out. But I do think, action is really how you can build confidence. It's how you can learn to improve. It's how you can kind of refine even, we've talked about elevator pitches before, if, that's something that you do, but I do think starting out is quite important. one of the things I actually wanted to do is actually wanted to pull up a question that I'm seeing from some of you guys, which, by the way, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat, because again, this time is for you guys, and I want you guys to be able to, walk away with some good, valuable tips. But ultimately, if we can get to your questions, we will definitely try our hardest to. But for those who are joining, I just want to welcome everybody. I'm here with my friend Kim, and we are talking about gaining recognition in the workplace via strong communications and how you can do it strategically without, yes, necessarily being off-putting. So the question that I actually want to pull up right here is for Padam. So his question is how to overcome the language barrier of this. And let's say if having a panic attack is something that you're experiencing because you have those things like those nerves and things like that, or not necessarily being able to come up with the right words at the right time. So Kim, any thoughts on that? And actually, I'll go first, as Kim, you want to think about this. But I work with a lot of people who are Asian, and that's just because kind of like the work I do. I work with a lot of people in Asia, and a lot of people always say my English is not that good. And the first thing I will always say is your language and how clearly your English is, let's say if we're talking about English here, does not translate into how people will perceive your level of competency or confidence. Because in the communications world, Kim, you might know this, communications is not just about what you say, it's also about your tone, and it's also about your body language, right? These are the three things that go into communications. And arguably, body language is the biggest influencer for how people perceive your confidence and competency. So I would say if it's a language barrier that a lot of people are struggling with, I would say focus on speaking perhaps slower or having variety, right? Maybe speaking a little bit faster or slower, or going higher or lower. I talk a lot about this on soulcastmedia.com. So if those want to read a bunch of these articles, I have it there. But another tip is body language. A lot of people, especially on virtual calls, they kind of just tense up. Their hands just stay on their mouse, right? But I say, yeah, take your hands off the mouse and use your hands to communicate. Use your shoulders, right? I mean, I truly say your body can be a huge asset when you're communicating and going to help you develop that speaking confidence, even though English may not be your first language necessarily. So Kim, any thoughts about that?
I would also say to good old-fashioned practice. And what I mean by that is I want you to envision like your favorite song, even if it's a song you haven't heard in a while. I don't want to start singing Baby Shark, but like you would know if I even started to do the you already know Baby Shark. Why? Because you've heard it so many times and it's like wormed its way into your brain. So I would say if you're doing a big presentation, if you're doing a pitch, if you are doing anything that involves you talking for like more than 45 seconds, practice it, because if you practice it enough, it will become like Baby Shark. You will just be able to sing that song in your head because you have practiced it so many times. I joke at this point that I could probably do the elevator pitch for my business in my sleep with my eyes closed, just because I've done it so many times. It is my own personal Baby Shark song.
Yes. I actually can resonate with that. Like I can't even say how many times I've introduced myself. Hi, my name is Jessica Chen. I'm the founder of, whatever, what I said in the beginning. And it's because I know I'm going to say this a lot. I'm going to introduce myself a lot. I've kind of gone down to a point where I can actually be very concise. There's no ums or ahs in those anymore because I practice. I actually have another question that I want to pull up. It's actually a really great question from another person who's on this call. And I think this is a really good one. How do you approach it in a workplace as a young female? So this person goes, I work in a male-dominated field, and I feel like it is hard to let coworkers know what is on my mind and ask for advice. So, whether female or not, I mean, that's a whole nother thing, that topic, but also about experience, right? Like if you're young and you're just starting out, you're an analyst, an associate, how can you kind of start speaking up when you feel like everybody else knows a lot more than you? So, Kim, what are your thoughts about this one? If you're young or you're a young female in this case in particular, how can you build that confidence?
I would say Again, recognize that even though you are young, you can bring a fresh perspective. So we all know those like curmudgeon-y old people that have been on the job for like a million years, and they're like, that's the way I've always done it since 1965 when I rode my horse and buggy into the office. So like those are great people to go to for historic wisdom. But if you have a question about TikTok, they might not be the person to go to. So I would say don't discount yourself just because you're young. You're bringing a unique perspective to the workplace that other people might not have. So number one, don't worry about that. You're bringing a unique approach. And I would say that the sword and the hill that I will die on when it comes to this subject is mentors. If I could get in a time machine and go back in time and crawl into my 21-year-old self, I would get mentors as quickly and rapidly as humanly possible. I think they are immensely important. In fact, I just did a whole workshop like this on LinkedIn all about mentors, how to get them, where to find them, how you can utilize them, because I just think to be young in the workplace, your ability to access mentors and learn from them is huge. People want to help young people that want their help. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you will get more help when you ask for more help, and the wheel goes around and around.
My tip, in terms of this question of, this person feeling like they're young, they're inexperienced in a male-dominated field. First of all, I can't even discount, it must feel tough, right? But, and the truth is, let's not even like sugarcoat it. It is really tough, right? Being female, kind of getting your voice heard in an industry where perhaps you might get overshadowed very easily. There's a lot of biases, which we won't necessarily get into right now. But, what I will say is, I think mentality is really important here, right? I know when you walk into an office or whether you're working virtually, it's easy to excuse it as like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't say anything because I am young, or I shouldn't say anything because everybody else is, male. I'm the only female, right? But if you feel like those thoughts aren't necessarily giving you that confidence, you have to try to, and I've called this like getting rid of these like mental barriers, because I truly think that this is a mental barrier, right? You're hyper focused on this one thought that it's not necessarily getting you into the more proactive, action-driven thoughts. So instead of focusing on I'm a young female in a male-dominated industry, think about what's that value add I can have. And I think, attitude is quite important here. I think, energy, making sure you have this enthusiasm and just start, right? One thing I will say about in a lot of like meetings, right? So if you're like the only female or you're the youngest one in the meeting, sometimes, taking the lead can give you a voice in the meeting if it's harder for you to contribute, right? Or you can play the time game, which I say sometimes speaking up earlier in a meeting is much better because you won't convince yourself not to speak, which happens to a lot of us where we're like, I want to say something, but 10 minutes in, conversation has digressed and you lost that opportunity, right? So that's kind of like my tip, making sure that your mental space is helping you, not hurting you. Timing, if maybe talking earlier rather than later can help you build that confidence, or really just taking the lead, whatever role you can play in that meeting. I think those are some good things. So again, oh my gosh, we're already like 30 minutes into this conversation. I think it's just like flown by. It's crazy. Which again, if anybody has any questions, please throw it in the chat. I'm here with my friend Kim right now, and we're just talking about how you can gain recognition in the workplace. So one question that I have for you, Kim, is the art of keeping things concise. And I think this is what a lot of people struggle with when it comes to communicating. And I know we've probably encountered a lot of people who just kind of go on and on and on, and you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, so what are your tips on keeping things concise and not being long-winded when you are communicating?
The way that I think about it is, and I'm just using the example of like a workplace, a mixer, maybe a networking event, maybe you're at a party, is you are the movie trailer. No one has signed up. No one paid $6.50 for the whole movie. They might watch the movie later, if the trailer's good. So what is the point of a movie trailer? It's to intrigue people.
Yeah.
It's to be like, wow, I want to see that new Black Widow movie. That trailer looks amazing, which it does. So you have to think about yourself as the movie trailer. So when you're talking to someone and they say, what do you do for work? Or tell me about this new project that you're working on. You're not going into the 2-hour movie description of everything that you're doing. You're just giving people a trailer. And if that trailer is good, one of two things might happen. One, they might follow up on the spot. Wow, Jessica, that sounds like a really interesting project. I'd love to learn more about that. Maybe after we finish this next presentation, I could come ask you some follow-up questions. So that like an immediate response. Or two, that person's going to keep you in mind and they're going to go search out the movie on their own. What do I mean by that? They're going to get home. They're going to get on these crazy things that we know and love, and they're going to Google you, and they're going to stalk you, and they're going to get on your LinkedIn, and they're going to get on your website. And then after they do a little more research, then they might reach out to you. Jessica, so great meeting you at that networking event. I was really intrigued about that thing you said, and now I wanted to follow up. So just remember, when you're thinking about being concise, you are the movie trailer. If people want to see the whole movie, they will either ask you about it or they will research and follow up later, which is one of the main reasons why I'm so really, hard on people about making sure your LinkedIn is up to date, making sure that that's as polished and crisp and clean as possible. Why? Because as we're talking, not everybody communicates in the same way. I might think of a question for Jessica in 2 days in the shower. So I might go onto her LinkedIn after that. I might not know that question right in that moment. So that's one of the reasons why when people are Googling you later, or when people are looking you up later, it's so important to make sure that how you're showing up online is clean and crisp and making sure that people want to see that whole movie.
I love that. I love that you use that analogy of a movie trailer because it's true. There's a reason why they're not, they choose to show only the 2 minutes of action-packed, you're like, oh, wow, and now I want to pay $15 or whatever a ticket, is these days to watch a movie. One of the things I will say is, when you're talking about yourself, and I know there's a question, it's like, how do you know if we have a good trailer, right? How can we create our own trailers? I think this is where using emotions is actually a really, powerful thing. A lot of times people think, oh, I have to be very straight edged and professional. I have to come off like in this way. But you know what? We're all humans in the end, right? Like we gravitate towards people who, first of all, that we can relate to, who we find interesting, who are able to kind of be comfortable showing a little bit of excitement or frustration or whatever it is. Because that's how you can kind of like, then you're like, oh, intrigued, right? I want to learn more. Actually, one of those things that I talk about a lot is when anybody gets into a conversation, right? What's the first question they ask? How are you doing, right? And a lot of people just say, good. And where do you go from there, right? Like after good. And this is especially in like small talk situations. So a lot of the people I work with, I advise them to say, hey, if somebody asks you, hey, how are you doing? Just say, hey, I'm good. I've actually just been really busy working on A, B, and C. Now you've given people what I call like talking points for them to like latch onto. And then they can be like, oh, you mentioned project A, B, and C. What is it? Or you can say, oh, work has been just so tiring because, of X, Y, and Z, right? Instead of just saying good, that in itself doesn't create that intrigue or that, interest for people to want to get to know you more, which gives you the opportunity to talk about yourself, right? So showing these emotions, I don't think it will take away your credibility. I don't think it will make you seem any less professional. It's about how you deliver it, right? So, but anything else, Kim?
I would just say, I know Clarissa was asking about really how to set up your movie trailer, and I would absolutely agree with you. Definitely putting emotions into that movie trailer is important. And then also I would say anything that you're really excited about. Like I always say to people, you can't fake excitement. Like when people are excited, they're just excited. So if there is something at work, no matter how nerdy it seems or how weird, if you're excited about something, share it. Like no matter how small it is. So if you're like, I'm really excited, we just got a new HR person, or I'm really excited about this new project I'm working on, or I'm really excited that I, cleaned up my desk,
Yeah.
whatever
Hey,
it is,
exciting.
if you're excited about something, I think, to your point, sometimes we're so used to just saying, oh, fine, good, all right. We don't necessarily share the good or the extreme bad. Not that you need to like dump your extreme bad on people, but if you're excited about something, I would say share it, because it's pretty awesome.
I agree. Like and honestly, if there's something good that happened, you absolutely should share it. That's an opportunity, right? Okay, first of all, it's 40 minutes has just flown by. For those who have been just like around and enjoying this chat with me and Kim, thank you so much. Again, anybody has any other questions, throw it in the chat. I want to pull up one other question that I have here from Jessica. How do you overcome being able to communicate when put on the spotlight? I tend to freeze and not respond, asking to get back to them later. So, well, first of all, Jessica, thank you so much for that question. And I totally get it. Like that feeling of when somebody asks you something and you're like, oh no, and then your heart starts pumping. I have one strategy that I actually do want to share, and I'll go first, Kim. So when you are put on the spot, this means somebody asks you something, right? And you don't necessarily have a response. What you want to avoid, right, for all of us who are on this call, you want to avoid the right? Because that can obviously show that you just don't know, right? So I talk about this physical movement that you can do, and it's called the down point movement. And that's actually a like strategic strategy that when you're put on the spot can help buy you time and doesn't necessarily make it seem like you were caught off guard. So what this means is, so when you're asked a question, you look down, right? Because you're like, oh no, I don't really know. But so you don't say anything right away. So you look down, you shake your head. So it gives a perception that you're thinking of a response, but really you could be, collecting any sort of like emotions or, butterflies or whatever that just came up. And then just calm your emotion. It's only about a few seconds, but nodding your head is key. So the down, up. So you look up now, right? And then you say your pointed statement right away. Just be like, that's a really good question. In fact, I was thinking of, A, B, and C. Or you can say, that's a great question. So you validate what they just said, but you're pointed. So what you're doing is you're eliminating that ums and ahs, right? And you're just going straight to the, let me look into that. Or you can say, whatever it is you want to say, or you can rehash something else that right? So you're not focusing necessarily on what you don't know. So I don't know, Kim, what do you have in terms of being put on the spotlight?
This happens to me all the time. And it drove my team crazy. I used to be guilty if I would just automatically say yes. They'd be like, can you put a monkey on the moon? I'd be like, yeah, my team can definitely do that. No problem. Then I'd get back to the office and I'd be like, so I kind of agreed that we'd put a monkey on the moon. And my team would be like, oh, what? Like you did what? And so I had to learn to stop doing that. And here's two things. Here's like my secret trick that now I realize I'm saying this out loud. So if I ever use this on any of you guys, you will know what I'm doing. But when I get nervous and I freeze up, or maybe I don't know the answer to something, this is what I do. One, I compliment the other person immediately. So I say like, that's a really great question, or Andrew, or that's a really great point, Andrew. I'm really glad you brought that up. And then I try to make myself look good by saying, I want to make sure that I get you a very specific, exact answer to that, which I can't provide at this moment. So let me follow back up via email when I can give you a more exact answer. One, it lets the person know like, oh, I did ask a good question. I'm amazing. So they'll love that. And number two, it makes them feel like, okay, wow, I know when Kim gets back to me, it's going to be the real deal. It's not going to be a vague like, well, I think we can do it. It might take 2 weeks. It might cost $10,000. It might. I'll say, I don't want to give you a maybe. I don't want to give you a wiggly giggly thing that I can't put my finger on. Let me email you when I have exact numbers and get back to my desk. And people are like, great. I know when Kim hits me back, they're going to be exact numbers. So that's a sneaky approach that I take.
That's a really great approach. And I think one of the key things with communications is setting people's expectations, right? And I definitely think you could resonate with this point, right? Like, definitely don't want to overpromise putting a monkey on the moon unless you know this can happen, right? So the beauty of communications is about setting people's expectations. So I think that's exactly what you did, right? Let me look into it. I'll get back to you by the end of this week. And so they'll know what to expect. And here's actually a great thing. If you say like end of this week and you get it to them by Wednesday, they'll be like, wow, she's really on top of her stuff, right? So that's like a really great way to like, you know, these little tips and tricks. But I think communications is really all about setting expectations. So we're actually about winding down here. I mean, I'm just so grateful. There's been so much great like engagement on this. Like people are just sharing their own advice, asking some great questions. I know there were a lot of great questions that we did not get a chance to get to. So to kind of just like wrap it up, you know, my whole thing with communications is I know it's not the easiest to do, especially when you're in a workplace and you're competing with a lot of people. And it's like, how do you balance this like art of communicating about getting recognized? But, you know, my final kind of capping point for this is baby steps, you know, whatever you tend to know that you tend to repeat, whether it's that elevator pitch, you know, introducing yourself, talking about what you do, right? A lot of people talk about what they do, refining that message because you know you're always going to be saying this is a great way for you to start building that confidence. And then it kind of just starts a little by little. You don't need to necessarily broadcast it to your entire team immediately, but, you know, I do think kind of being able to use your voice to talk about yourself is really key. So Kim, any final parting words to our honestly fantastic audience who really stayed with us the entire time?
I would say, please don't be strangers. Like Jessica, I'm on LinkedIn, so I'd love to connect with you there. I also go live on LinkedIn every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We get together with interesting entrepreneurs and leaders and executives to learn what works from them, which I talked a little bit before about my What Works newsletter, which is also available on LinkedIn, where we just get down in the nitty gritty about what's working for smart people so that we can copy their homework and use it for ourselves, which is something I'm always game for. And then if you're like, LinkedIn, not really my speed, you can find me on Instagram. I'm over there as well. It's just my name, Kim Kaupe. But the little secret trick that I like to tell people is if you start to spell out Kim Kardashian, Kimka, I'm right under Kim Kardashian. So there's going to be a naked Kim K and there's going to be a Kim K with her clothes on. I'm the Kim K with her clothes on. That's where you'll be able to find me.
I love that. I don't know, like that's kind of like a great trick. Thank you, Kim Kardashian, for that. I don't know. Anyways, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here with us, spending your morning or evening, afternoon, wherever it is. I mean, there's literally over 150 of you guys who are on this with us, and I am just so grateful for it. Like Kim said, be sure to follow her. She does post these fantastic tips. She goes live here on LinkedIn as well. And again, of course, for those who are following me already, thank you. But if not, follow me as well. I'm always talking about communications. That's kind of what I love and enjoy the most. So again, thank you again. And thank you to our sponsors, Low & Sons. And we will see you at our next Soulcast Media Live. And I hope everyone takes care and stays safe. Thanks, everybody. Bye.